Hi, welcome to the training webinar for this week. I'm Dale Franks. This week and for the next 3 or 4 weeks, I have it scheduled for 4 weeks, and it will probably take that long to get through. I think my scheduling is reliable, but for those next 4 weeks, we are going to be building an application from scratch, and I am going to try to throw in everything but the kitchen sink to go over all of the things that you need to do to create a full application. So we're going to cover the form and the process timeline and business values and drop downs and knowledge views and all of the other things that are needed to create a full featured application in Process Director. Essentially, what I'm doing is I'm taking together the last 14 months worth of training webinars on individual issues, and we are going to be going into a series of webinars that brings all of that stuff together into one place so that we can just go end to end with creating an application using all of the things that we've learned over the last 14, 15 months or so of training webinars. So we are going to be going into a fairly expansive and tedious amount of detail for covering all of these things. And without further ado, let's go ahead and start now. So we are starting from here, and it looks like I am a little bit off on my screen position there. Let's get it back so we can see our whole screen. And I'm still a little bit off. I'm going to have to change this just slightly. I'm adjusting my screen borders in Zoom so that we can try to get a full 1920 by 1080 picture of what it is that we're doing. So forgive me for having to do this little administrative task here. But in any event, we're going to start off with a blank folder. Now, what I should start with is that most of what we're going to talk about today in terms of getting your application set up, you should not be doing on a regular basis, which is to say you should have done it once and then created a template in the template library so that you can get a head start on all of the basics of creating an application, right? You have to create a form, you have to create a process timeline, you have to link the two together, you have to set up some form properties, your standard form fields, all of that stuff is stuff that you generally have to repeat every time you create an application, which is one of the more tedious things. So I have what is called an application stub, and you should too, really. If we go into my template library, I have my application template here, which basically contains my form, my timeline, and my email template. They are all linked. I don't have any business rules or knowledge views set up with it yet, but I do have the folders that would contain them whenever I created my application. But the 3 things that I really need to have for every application, my form, my timeline, and my email template, they're already done, and they are done with all of the basic features already filled out. So as you can see, I've got these 2 properties filled out here. In my options, I've already got the timeline connected. If we actually go and look at the form itself, I've got my basic fields already in here. So all of the stuff that I would normally have in every single form, they're already pre-made for me, so I don't have to make them. Similarly, with the timeline definition itself, I've already got my set request number. I've got my approval loop with approval 1 and approval 2. They're not fully configured. Again, they are just stubs, but they are there. I don't have to rebuild this configuration with my approval loop. It's all done for me. Plus, of course, when I go into my options for the timeline definition, my form and my email template are already hooked up. So normally for me to build a new application in Process Director, I would go into the folder. We'll assume that this is the folder where I want to create it. And I would just go create new, start from template. And I would just call this, we'll just call it webinar for right now. And I would pick application as my application and hit OK. And the system will automatically use the template library to build my webinar folder. Remember, I called the application webinar. And so I now have a webinar folder. I have the webinar email template, the webinar form, and the webinar timeline already created. So the first part of the day, before we actually get into building what the actual app it is that we're going to be building over the next couple of weeks, the first thing we're going to do today is kind of replicate all of this work that you really only have to do once. Once you have built this application and you have placed it in your template library folder. So here is the application in my template library folder. I don't have to do this work over and over again. It really does save an enormous amount of time just in doing sort of the simple, tedious stuff that you have to do with every application. So it's very important, I think, just in terms of saving yourself some time of building that application template stub, that all you have to do is just build your new application off of that. And it really does get you an hour or so, perhaps even more, ahead of where you would be if you had to create everything from scratch. The thing with creating your template application is you have to create it as if it was a real application. You have to put in all of your initial configurations, which is to say, the global configurations, the stuff that every application you use is going to need, right? Your form, your timeline, and your email template. So it's easiest if you do that in the template library. Now, when you're building it, you'd have to build it just like you do any other application. You're probably going to have to go ahead and build it from scratch. And so that is where we are going to start off today. Okay, so the first question that we often get asked is, all right, where do I start? If I got to create a new application, where do I start? Do I create the form first, or do I create the process timeline first? And the answer to that really is it doesn't matter very often which you create first. In fact, my suggestion would be anytime that you're going to create a new application, that you go ahead and you just create the form, the process timeline, and the email template and link them together. You're not going to do any configuration of them other than the actual linking. But here's the thing. When you build a form, there are often times when you have conditions that are based on what goes on in the timeline and vice versa. So it's not very often that you can just build an entire form in isolation and then say, okay, form is done. Now let's build the timeline. And now timeline is done. Let's build the email template. Most of the time, you have to do a fair amount of switching back and forth. So the easiest thing to do is just create the 3 objects you need right off of the bat. And that is why in my application template, I have these 3 objects already created. So simply because it comes first in the drop down, we're going to go ahead and create a form definition. And I'm just going to call it the building, 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 and I still can't type, building apps form. And I'm going to hit OK. And because it is a brand new form, it is going to take me right into the Form Designer. I don't really want to be here, so I'm just going to back straight out of this, go back to my training webinar folder or my app creation folder in any event. And I need to see that app creation folder over here. It didn't update whenever I built it. And now I'm not sure why it isn't showing me my folder. I am irked. I should have an app creation folder over here, and it's not showing up. In any event, I've built a form. Now I'm going to go ahead and build a process timeline. And we'll just call this the building apps TL. And once again, extraneous letters we have to get rid of. We'll just hit OK. And while I'm here and I've created the form, I might as well just go ahead and do the form for timeline property and set that to the building apps form. In most cases, the reason that I am setting this is to enable me to create form-based conditions. In most cases, I don't need this property. In most cases, the process timeline is actually invoked by a form submission. So technically, if I had no form-based conditions that I cared about or that I were going to implement, I really wouldn't even need to do this and set this form for timeline property, because what it mainly does in the normal course of events is it just makes it easier for me to write conditions, right? If I have a form-based condition, then setting this property means that if I ever need to evaluate a form field, it will by default go to my building apps form and list the form fields that exist on that form for me automatically, so that I don't have to choose the form every time I do a form-based condition. All I have to do is just pick the form field, and all other form-based properties that are available will look at this form, or more precisely, the instance of this form that is attached to the process timeline, for all of the information that it's looking for form-based conditions. I think it's probably relatively rare that you would not ever have any form-based conditions. So you're probably going to want this most of the time. But in the normal order of events, where I'm going to submit a form as an end user, and that form is going to invoke the process timeline, this property is not necessary. Where it is necessary is if I am going to invoke this process timeline from some sort of automated action, like a goal, right? If I run a goal invokes the process timeline. It doesn't invoke the form. So in that case, if I invoke the process timeline, either via a goal, or you might have a knowledge view that invokes a new instance, a new process instance for every row in a knowledge view, I'm really going to need this property set, because the timeline will be invoked independently. And if I don't have this property set, there will not be a form instance attached to the process when it starts. So filling out this property does two things. Number one, it enables me to make form-based conditions way easier while I'm configuring my process timeline. Number two, if I ever need to invoke this process timeline outside of a form submission, I can do so, and the appropriate form instance will always be associated with the process timeline instance that gets invoked. So we're going to set that property. I'm also going to need to set this default email template, but I haven't built that yet, which I'm about to do. So we are just going to go ahead and hit OK for now and save and close our process timeline. And now we are going to create our email template. Now, email templates are a form definition, but they are a special type of form definition, and you have to denote them as so when you build them. So we are going to have our building apps email template. And we have to go to our options section right here. And we need to tell Process Director that this is, in fact, an email template. It is not a data entry form. And so we'll just go ahead and hit OK. And like any other new form, it is going to take us to the design view. I don't want to mess with this right now, other than to say this. Email templates are designed to build the text message that gets sent with the email. We routinely get questions from customers about form controls, and about once every 3 or 4 months, some customer says, look, I'm trying to put a control on my email template so that the user can fill it out and return the data, and it's not working. Well, no, it's not going to work, because email messages, the stuff that you get in Outlook, those are not forms. Those are text messages. Outlook or Thunderbird or Google Mail, for that example, or for that matter, they make emails look like HTML pages. You have bold and underline, and you can, in fact, show form fields in an email message, but they can't work. And the reason they can't work is because the email messages are text messages. The pretty things that you see in an email with pictures and all of that stuff, it looks great, but that's because Thunderbird and Outlook and Google Mail are lying to you and pretending that that mail is a web page. It is not. It is a text message. Now, the text message may contain HTML code, and your email client, Thunderbird, Outlook, whatever, may take that HTML and pretty it all up for you and display it as if it were a web page, but it's not. It is a plain text message. It has no features. It has no functionality. It's just a text message. So you can't fill out values. By the way, when you receive the email message, it's in Outlook. Even if you do see form fields in it, there's not much you can do with those form fields because, well, the message is not a form. It's a text message. Yes, there are ways around this. There is wizardry that you can use to make it act form-like, but that's not what Process Director does. We're not doing email marketing. So just keep in mind, whatever we create here has to be a text message. That means we can't include any data input fields. We can output fields to it. So we can use things like system variables to throw form field values and stuff onto it. But remember, we're only sending text here. But we do now have the 3 main objects that we need for our application. So we're just going to go ahead and get out of our email template. And now we are going to go ahead and link them together. Now, there's nothing to link on an email template. And I do want to point out that because it is an email template, we don't have a lot of options here in the options section. Most of the things that you would see in a normal form, they're all hidden now because this is an email template. So you should just know that this is really designed to do one thing, and that is build the text message that is going to be sent via email. But now that we have it, we can now go ahead and finish our links. So we can go back into our our process timeline, and we can now set our building apps email template as the default email template in this timeline. The reason that I am setting this here is so that I have one template that I know will always be sent with any activity notification that gets sent from this timeline. This doesn't mean that this is the only email template that I can ever use, because every activity I create has a notifications tab. Technically, I could use a different email template for every process timeline activity that I create. I generally don't want to do that. I generally want to have as few email templates as possible. And obviously, I want to configure it as easily as possible. And this is about the easiest configuration that you can do is by having a default email template that has all of the stuff that you would normally want to send in any sort of email notification. And once it is set as the default email template, then I really don't have to worry about configuring the email template on the individual notifications tab for each timeline activity. Now, there are cases where if I create an activity, and let's just go ahead and create one and open it up, and let's look at the notifications tab. Now, there may be instances where I might want to use a unique email template with a particular timeline activity. And if I do, that's fine. I have the using email template property, which enables me to select a template that will be used for this specific timeline activity. So if you need to do that, that's always available to you. But for the most part, a single email template used as default is good enough to get you through the vast majority of circumstances that you're going to encounter with an email. So great. We now have the email template and the form linked to our timeline. What we do not have linked is our form. So let's go back to our form, and we need to set two properties. The first we need to set is the property that is the process that we're going to start after the form is submitted, which is going to be our building apps timeline. Now, that is great, but that automatically start this process after a form is submitted. That is literally all this property does. Basically, it says that when I hit the submit button on my form, I want you to kick off an instance of the building apps timeline. It doesn't do anything else. Now, let's go back to what I said about conditions. I often need to have conditions on the form, and we are in fact going to have some. There are sometimes, in the example that we are eventually going to get to sooner or later as we build out this project, there are going to be some form fields that I only want to display based on where I am in the process timeline. And to make my life easier for building those timeline-based conditions, I also need to set timelines associated with form. Now, this does something different. This builds that association between the form and the building apps timeline that whenever I start creating conditions and I look for timeline-based conditions to build, it's automatically going to look at the building apps timeline to ensure that this is the timeline that gets used whenever I create a condition. So again, this is going to make my life easier. So you do at least need to set those two properties for your form. And we're going to go ahead and update so we are saved. So at this point, it doesn't do anything. It has no form fields. It has no information, but technically, I have a working application. I have a form that I could submit. It will invoke a instance of a process timeline. It will send me an email. The email will be blank, but it will send one to me. I don't have any results, so there's not much I can do here, but I have a working application at this point because I have built the three objects I need and I have linked them. So technically, I can run this form. It's not a great form and it doesn't do much, but when it loads, I will at least have a submit button and I can submit this form, and this form is reloading. That means that I am in a task. Remember, I created a blank user task in the process timeline. I am now working in that task. I have a complete button to complete the task that I've been assigned. And even though my email is closed, as it usually is whenever I do a webinar, so that I don't get bothered by a bunch of email notifications. If I open up Outlook here, I should have an email message telling me about my activity assignment, which I can open. And as I said, it's not a great email, but it at least tells me that I have a timeline task assignment in activity one. Guess what? I've got a working app. I would not call it a completed app, but it is an app and it does work. So I have all of the building bits that I need. All I have to do now is build my application, configure my form and whatnot. So at this point, now we need to actually start building the basics of our application. So we're going to start off with the form. Again, it doesn't matter whether you start off with the form or the process timeline. This is the way I do it. Nothing says that you have to do it that way. The order in which you create these things is largely unimportant and largely irrelevant, because you're probably going to have to switch back and forth at least a couple of times to configure both things as you go. The first thing I need to do is take care of this. This is the default instantiated form name, and it is not going to be very helpful, because what this default name is going to give me is building apps form submitted on whatever date it was created. And if I go into a knowledge view and I want to return form instances, having a whole bunch of instances that say building apps form submitted on with some date is not going to be very helpful to me. I already know there are instances of the building apps form. That's generally not what I need to know whenever I am going into a knowledge view to try to find specific requests. So I need to be able to find that specific request. Now, so far, I have no form fields on this form. I am going to create one, and it's going to be called request number or recno. I don't really know what I'm going to call it, but this would be a good time to figure it out, because I do need to change that instantiated form name to provide me with a form field that I can count on to be unique. We haven't gone in and done anything on the form yet, so you might think I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself, but I always know that I'm going to have 3 fields on every single form that I create. 2 of them, you might argue, are unnecessary because I can access the data that those 2 form fields will contain in other ways. But 2 of them, the submitter and the submit date or create date, are always available to me via system variable. And that's fine enough, I suppose. I would like to display them on the form. I would like them to become part of the permanent form data. I'd like to be able to search on them as form fields in a knowledge view at some later date. So I am going to need to know who the form submitter is. So I'm going to need a field for that. I'm going to need to know the date the form was submitted. So I need a field for that. And I need to know what the individual request number is for the form. Now, there are a number of different ways that you can do this. I am going to go over the way that I think is probably easiest for me to do and to understand and to make clear for others. I do not represent this as the most efficient or best way to do it, and maybe your organization has a better idea for how they want to attack that problem of having a unique form or request ID for each form. But I do know that I'm going to have a request number field on my form. And because I know it, I can actually go ahead and set the instantiated form name to use it. In fact, I know the three fields that I'm going to have. I'm going to have a submitter, I'm going to have a submit date, and I'm going to have a request number. And assuming that I know what I'm going to name those fields, which I largely do, I can go ahead and fill out the instantiated form name using the form field system variables for those three fields to create a combination of request number, submitter, and date that will enable me to have three different search criterion in the form instance name alone that I can use to search by. I can search them by date. I can search by submitter and get all of the submissions from a particular submitter, or I can search by a request number and get the specific request that has that request number with it. This is very useful to me. So what I am going to do is I am just going to say request number, and now I'm going to use my first form field system variable. So I'm going to use request number, which means this is going to have to be my request number field on the form. I do a lot of different versions of this. Sometimes I use REQNO for rec number, or request NO for a request number. I'm going to go ahead and give it the full field name this time so that we know exactly what that field is. So it's going to be request number, whatever the number happens to be, whenever we create whatever numbering scheme that we're going to create to uniquely identify each form by, and then I am going to put submitter as the submitter field. I did not put my colon in. That is very important so that we know that it is a form field system variable on, and then submit date. And once again, forgot the colon. Submit date. So now I'm going to have request number 10 by Dale Franks on August 6th, 2026. Okay, that's a pretty unique name for each instance. I'm going to be happy with that. Of course, I have now committed myself to using the request number, submitter, and submit dates as my three standardized fields on the form. They are going to have to exist. I always create those same three fields on the form, so eventually they will. And I am safe in just going ahead and setting my instantiated form name, but it's an important property to set right up at the front. Right below that, form fields are enabled by default. This is the default setting, and it is awful. We need to change this. In general, here is how a form should work. A submitter opens a form. That form displays to the submitter only the editable fields that the submitter needs to submit the request that they want to submit. Once that request is submitted, those fields should no longer be editable. So that means I'm going to have to do two things as part of my application creation. The first thing I'm going to have to do is determine when I want to stop being able to edit my form fields. And that will be once the form has been submitted. So I want form fields to be enabled only when the new form instance equals true. I may have, as we looked at last week, another instance where I might want to edit form fields. That's if I want to make the whole form editable. for the most part, we're going to edit individual fields as necessary while the form moves through the approval process, right? So the submitter ideally should see only those form fields that they need to submit their initial request, which means if there are any discussion fields or any approval fields that approvers need to fill out or what have you, they don't need to see those fields. They just need to be able to edit the fields in their request. Once the request is submitted, those fields, and actually none of the other fields on the form, should be editable. Once a form is submitted, I, as the application designer, want to determine at each step what form fields the users who open the form are allowed to edit. So the easiest way to accomplish this is just to set form fields are enabled only when new form instance equals true. So we go to form, new form instance, and we'll say yes. And so now my form fields are enabled only when new form instance is true. Once I submit that form, every form field is disabled. So I'm just going to have to control, as the application designer, what each user is allowed to edit along the way with whatever the process may be and whoever's going to need to edit what on the form. I'm going to control that. It's easy for me to control that because I am now setting a form level disabling command. I'm just saying disable the whole form. But the way that disabling and enabling works is if there is a conflict between two objects on a form as to whether they are enabled or disabled, the object at the lowest level always wins. So I can disable the entire form, and then later on in the process, I can enable a section or even an individual form field. And if that form field is enabled, then any conflict between what happens here at the form level, which is the highest possible level, there is a form hierarchy, right? The form is the top level of the hierarchy. The form contains usually layout controls like sections. So the sections are the next level down, and each section may contain its own individual controls. So you're just with a form with sections and data controls, I have three levels of control, two of which are containers, the form and the section. And then the controls are always at the lowest level. So whatever's at the lowest level wins. So this is very safe for me to do and gives me a lot more control over when and how my form is edited. The next thing I need to decide is what happens after my process completes. Do I want to give anybody the ability to go in and make changes to that form? You got to think seriously about this because you're probably going to have some knowledge views that give people access to that form to open it up. And depending on what permissions you set, and we'll be talking about permissions next month at some point, but depending on what permissions you set, they may have the ability to edit those forms. We generally don't want that. In general, now this is not a universal thing, but in general, the vast majority of the cases, once a process is finished, once we've processed a request and we've approved or denied it, that is set in stone. We don't want anyone to come back in later and make changes to the historical data. So we have this entire form is read-only when property. It's a very convenient property because it allows me to create a condition that sets the form as read-only whenever the process timeline is marked as completed. So we'll go to timeline and timeline status, and we'll set the timeline status to complete. Now, the reason why we're setting the timeline status to complete here is that We don't want to make the form read-only at any point until our process is finished. So if it's active, we obviously need to be able to make changes to the form. Approvers need to be able to add their comments, whatever. I might return it to the submitter, and the submitter may need to make changes to it. I've got to be able to edit that form. But once my process timeline is complete, the request is done. Whatever disposition it gets, whether it's approved or disapproved or what have you, that process is done. I want to set that in concrete at this point. So when my timeline is complete, I want the entire form to be read-only. Now, let me be clear. Setting the form as read-only has no effect on the visual state of the form. If a field is still enabled for some reason, then it will show up as an enabled field. And you would, in fact, be able to go into that form field and change the value. But by setting the form as read-only, if I change that value and I hit submit, whatever I changed it to just gets ignored. Any changes to the data on the form, irrespective of whether the field is enabled or disabled or what have you, they'll be rejected because timeline status is complete. That form is now read-only. So don't confuse read-only with a visual state. It has nothing to do with how the form looks or what it looks like you're allowed to do or edit on the form. This is on the database side where it just says, yeah, we're not going to save any more changes to this form. Doesn't matter how the form looks. It's just going to reject all of your changes. So you do need to make that setting explicit on the form. Okay, so great. I've got a new form. It has a unique instantiated form name. It's going to be enabled for editing on a new form instance and then disabled after that. And I'll have to figure out what I want enabled or disabled. And when my process is done, nobody can come back in and change it. Don't take this to the bank. I mean, anyone else who is an administrator and who has access to the content list could technically come along and change this setting. This is not perfect security here. What it does do is it prevents end users who might have access to the form instance through a knowledge view or what have you, and who might open it. It prevents them from making any changes. It's super difficult to create a system that is immune from having a system administrator come in and literally bypass your security. But we're not going to be able to protect you from every insider threat that exists. So just keep in mind that what we're doing here is setting up a security model to defend it from largely inadvertent changes that might be made by end users. We're not, trying to do a full-on security hardening here. Now, because we are going to disable our fields, that does leave us with a couple of questions. One is how we're going to show that disabled field. Now, I like show disabled fields as text. If you have a disabled field, in most cases, the disabled field, and I think if we come down here and look at default styles, we can see an example of what a disabled field looks like. Most of the time, a disabled field looks like that. And I have to move my cursor because you can't even see what that disabled looks like. But most of the time, it is this right here, this grayed out field. Now, there are some disadvantages to this. First of all, it is a form field. So we have to deliver all of the form field HTML to the form, and then we have to style it as disabled so that people can't actually go in and make changes to it. But it's got all of the form field overhead associated with it. Also, this style I particularly dislike because it's going to show you gray text on a gray background. Now, that is the HTML standard, which was promulgated long before anybody, well, long before the W3C existed, and anybody at the W3C was thinking about accessibility. So it's not a great style, that grayed out control. And there is the philosophical or conceptual principle of, if my user cannot fill out this form field, why am I showing it to them as a form field? Now, there may be circumstances where that is either necessary or desirable. But I tend to err towards turning on show disabled fields as text, because all that gets delivered to the user's browser is the text value of the field itself. We don't see the control. We don't have to pass any of the control HTML and mark the control as disabled. It does save us a lot of overhead, and we're not showing the user a control that is irritatingly grayed out, which is, in my view, kind of like taunting them, right? Yeah, here's a control. It's a data control. You could enter data. Well, you can't, but other special people can. It just seems like an unnecessarily argumentative thing to do. So while I recognize that there are circumstances where you do not want to show disabled fields as text, where you would want to show them as fields, and there are a couple of good reasons for that, for the most part, I err on turning on show disabled fields as text, because it saves on form overhead, and it doesn't show end users a form control that they can't fill out anyway. Since they can't fill it out, why show it to them as a form control? So I believe in clicking on that. Then we come to auditing. Now, it is not true in most cases that you need to audit every form field change that gets made on the form during the course of its lifetime. But you might. If you are a cloud customer with a subscription license, or an on-premise customer with a subscription license, or, and they still exist almost 10 years later, if you still have one of the old tiered licenses that contains the compliance edition, then you have the ability to audit form field changes. What audit form field changes does is it tracks every change made to every form field in the form when they are made. And in fact, there is an audit viewer tab that will appear on the form instance properties that actually goes in and shows you what changes have been made. Now, I don't have a form, I don't think that has it, because I don't usually turn on audit form field changes. But I am going to go ahead and save and close this form. And let's go back over here in my archive. And we'll go to advanced design concepts, which is kind of the inspiration for what we're doing today anyway. And we will go into our advanced form. We need to do that over here because we need to grab some form instances. So here are all of my form instances. I'm going to check this form instance. Now, normally what happens here, if I was just to click on the form, it would just open the form itself. That's not super helpful for us. I need to open the properties. So I'm going to go up here to the properties button. And here is my audit viewer tab right here. Now, I didn't make any changes to these forms, so there's nothing to audit. But what the audit viewer tab will show you, if you have that, audit form fields checkbox checked, is the name of the field. It's control name, actually. What the initial value was, what the new value has been changed to, when that happened, when it was updated, and the user who updated it. Now, even if you have auditing turned on, you may not see anything on the Audit Viewer tab. I mean, it may be that no one went in and changed an existing form field value. So what you're going to see on the Audit Viewer tab of a form that has the form field auditing turned on is every form field and what values were changed on that form field by who and when. It will not necessarily show you every field on the form that has been filled out, but it will show you every field where a value existed and then was changed to a different value. And what this enables you to do is to follow the edit history of a form. Now, if you are not in a regulated industry, so you're not in medical affairs, or you're not part of any of the regulatory requirements imposed by the Department of Defense or the FDA or other government agencies, form field auditing is probably not something you will use a lot. However, a lot of our customers are in regulated industries. And so being able to audit the form fields and audit what is going on in them is a very important consideration for them. So therefore, we have that property and we have the ability to implement form field changes there and to be able to check just to be sure. If there's any question about what the value of a field should be, you can always go to the Audit Viewer tab of the form instance and see how it got to that state. The rest of these properties are not super important for right now, so we're going to kind of ignore them. We just really wanted to talk about the most important properties. There are a whole bunch of other things that you can do here, right? You can set a background image for your form and change the background color. That's cool. But that's something that you can experiment with and play with and see how it works. At the bottom, your default styles. Now, we have default styles that are built into Process Director. You don't necessarily have to change any of these. You can just accept the default styles that we have. However, if there is a style that you would want to change, you can change it by picking one of the options in this sort of drop-down menu. The other thing that you can do, and by the way, when you select one of these options, so we'll select that style. Note what it does. It throws in some CSS styling here. That should give you a hint that you can, in fact, just write your own CSS styling. If you know CSS, you can just write the styles that you want right here. For example, the background color is this light red. It's got a solid 1 pixel border. That is that darker red, and we're setting it as important. We're creating some padding. We got several CSS styles that we could drop here. So you can actually just write your own CSS styles there. You're not limited to the selections here. Although, like I said, for the most part, we have those styles built into Process Director. You can kind of ignore those. If you really, really want to go in and do some styling, you can also do some additional CSS body styling. We are not going to get into CSS or anything like that, but you should know that you have those abilities. At this point, however, I have created the properties that I want for my form, and I have set the appropriate security settings for it here. I've got my links. So now I can update my form. And at this point, now I'm ready to go in and begin editing the form itself. So the very first thing we need to talk about when editing the form are the fields that we need. Now, as we saw earlier, what we have, and I'm going to close that and I'm going to try to reopen that. All right, you know what we're going to do? We're going to refresh the entire page. I am a little irked as to why my content list is not showing me that app creation folder, which I really want to see because it's going to make moving around and navigating a lot easier for me. Now, I'm not sure why it wasn't showing it, but now it is. And so I've got my app creation folder. So let's go back to my form. Well, actually, before we go back to my form, let's remember that we have these three fields. We know we're going to need to create those three fields. So we need to keep in mind that's what those field names are. And now we can begin creating the standard part of the form. There's a couple of different ways that we can approach this. Normally, we have some sort of branding on the form. So I'm just going to go through and put in some BP Logix branding on the form using our colors and what have you. So I am going to create a table. And this table is going to be one row, and I'm going to do something kind of cutesy here. I'm going to make it 3 columns wide. I'm now just making up design stuff in my head. I don't need any headers. I don't need a caption or a summary. This is solely a sort of a display table. There is actually a new property on the table that marks it as just a layout table, which is kind of how I'm using it here. It doesn't appear in this version of it. I guess I'd have to be in 6.1.200 to show you. So just so that you know, there are some changes coming up to the table properties for accessibility reasons. For now, though, we're just going to keep this table. I've changed some options. I don't want to close the dialog window. I want to hit OK, not cancel, and create my form. So I'm going to do a couple of things here. I am going to highlight. I'm going to try to highlight all 3 cells there. And I'm going to go to cell and cell properties. And I am going to set the background color to the BP Logix dark blue 082 F4D. I'm not going to spend a lot of time explaining why I'm doing what I'm doing. I'm just going to go ahead and do it because your styling is going to be a little bit different. So what I'm going to do in this first column is I am going to add a logo, and I'm going to use the built-in image control that is built into the editor itself. I am not going to use our BP Logix image control. I am just going to use this one. And the reason I'm going to use this one is it just allows me to upload the file. So I'm going to go to choose a file, and we're going to go to work and BP Logix logos. And I am going to pull, why don't I pull the logo mark? That'll be fine. We'll just throw in the BP Logix logo mark. I'm going to upload it to the server. As you can see, this is a very large PNG file. It is 2,524 pixels wide. That may be excessive. So let's go ahead and change that real quick to 200 pixels wide. And there we go. That will be the size of my logo. In fact, I should probably make it a little smaller, right? I should probably make it somewhere in the 180-ish size to make it a little smaller, because what I'm going to do for this table cell that it's in is I'm going to change that table cell width, and I'm going to set it to a constant width. So I'm just going to go to cell and cell properties. I'm going to do 2 things. First of all, I'm going to set the horizontal alignment to center so that it centers my logo in the cell horizontally, and I am going to set the width in pixels, not percent. I want a fixed width. And here I am going to set that width to 200. And as you can see, it's kind of hard to see, but there is my cell border. Well, can I get a arrow? No, I guess I can't. My cell border is right here with my logo mark inside it. I'm real happy with that sort of setup. So I'm going to go to my next cell. My middle cell is where I'm going to have the name of the form name. So I'm going to do a couple of things. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set the font color to white so that I can see it when I type. And we will just call this the Building Apps form. And I'm probably going to want to make some changes to this. Let's make the size larger and let's make it bold. That may be a little too large. I might want to back off of this a little bit. And the reason I might want to back up off this a little bit is because of what I'm about to do in the third column. I'm going to need some more space. Now, I am going to leave all of the other properties in this cell alone. I don't really need to change them. I've already got the appropriate horizontal alignment. I especially don't want to change the width of the cell. I want the cell to be sort of a free-flowing width. And I'll tell you why. Because over here in this cell, this is where I'm going to need some extra space. So I'm going to right-click, go to Cell, and Cell Properties, and I am going to set this to about 300 pixels. So what I've got now is my first column is fixed to 200 pixels. My last column is now fixed to 300 pixels. And the center column is going to automatically resize as my screen changes. So, for example, if I close the sidebar, you can now see that this middle column has now just automatically expanded because I have fixed the size of the first and last column. And the reason I've done that is because I am going to add some data into this column. I think what I want to do is add it as a nested table. If you want to do complex alignment and complex layout, you can nest a table inside another table. And that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to create a new table, and it is going to be 3 rows and 1 column. And I am going to hit OK. And so now I am going to decide what goes into each one of these columns. So the very first thing I want at the very top is what my request number is going to be. We're now getting to the 3 fields that we used on the instantiated form name. I need to create them here on the form. And I'm just going to create them as kind of administrative fields up here in the top header. That will save me a lot of vertical space on the form. So I'm just going to throw right up here, and I'm going to, again, set my text color to white since I have this navy blue background. And I'll have request number. And now I need to throw in the form field. So let's keep in mind that I set disabled fields as text. All 3 of the fields that I am going to put up here for my request number, my submitter, and my submit date are all going to be disabled, which means they're all going to be shown as text. So I am going to need basically a text field to show the request number, a user picker to show the submitter, and a submit date, a date time field to show the submit date. But keep in mind that even though I'm placing these controls on the form, they're going to be disabled. And that means they're going to show up as text when the form actually runs. So the first thing we're going to do is create our input field here, request number, and we are going to call it request number, which is what we named it in the instantiated form field name. Purely for visual purposes, I am going to dial this back down from 20 columns to say 5. Actually, I could probably get away with a couple of more. What I'm trying to do is just put it on a single line, just in terms of how it looks in the design view. All right, so I've got my request number field. I need to do two things to it. First thing I need to do is go to the field properties, and I need to set the default value. Now, I don't have a request number value. So I am going to set as a default value a string. I am not actually going to set that request number until my form is submitted. So a request number, an actual request number, won't exist yet. So I'm just going to go make this a string, and I'm just going to type in unsubmitted, and that will let everybody know that the form is not yet been submitted. So there is no request number. I am probably going to want to do some stuff here with how this particular field is formatted. I'm probably going to want to boldface the font, and I'm probably going to want to make it a little larger. So let's say, 20, so that I can get the proper request number. Maybe that's a little too big, or maybe I can just make my column a little wider if I need to. But in any event, I've got my request number field, and now I need to throw in my other two fields real quick. So we'll set the text as right. We'll set this on submit date. And again, what I should have done is boldface this. So boldface, submit date, and now I'll just throw in my date field. There it is right there, and we'll call it submit date. I'm going to go to the field properties here. Oh, I forgot to do one thing over here. I said I was going to do two things. I only did one thing on my field properties for my request number. This field is disabled. And the same thing here for my form submit date. We'll go to the field properties. Again, it needs a default value. That value will be form submit date. And this field will also be disabled. And then I'll go down here and once again, change my font color, set it to bold, and we'll set our submitter. And for this, we'll drag a user picker, and we'll call it submitter. We'll go into these field properties. Our default value is going to be form submit user. And once again, we are going to disable this form. And I'm going to hit Control S, or I could hit save, one of the two. Up on the toolbar, I hit Control S on the keyboard. I'm going to save my form. And now I'm going to click Save and Test Form. I probably should have just gone ahead and clicked Save and Test Form because I want to see what my request number looks like. Right now it says request number, unsubmitted, submit date, and I didn't quite catch everything in white there, so I'm going to have to go back. And this is why we save and test form, so that we can also check out how good a job we're doing in terms of formatting and whatnot. So I do note that this may be a little large here, this are a little small here. I might want to make it a little bit larger. So let's go to cell properties. Let's give her another 50 pixels there. And that should rationalize everything. And now I should be able to save and test form, take another quick look at it, see how it looks. There we go. Now I'm kind of happy with how we're looking here. So I've got my header done and I've got my first three fields here. The more importantly, now this is still going to say unsubmitted when I submit it. So take this with a little bit of a grain of salt. But we're going to go ahead and submit this form. And the reason that we are going to, well, I'm save and test. So it's not actually even going to submit the form. I would probably have to hit save and run to actually submit the form. But the reason I want to submit the form, the only reason that I want to submit the form is to go and look at the form instances so that we can see our form instance name. So there we go. We'll go ahead and complete that. We'll go to the form instances for the form. Well, let's save and close the form. Let's be sure that it's kind of belt and suspenders because I don't want to have to come back and redo all of this. Let's be sure that our form is saved. And after we have done so, now we will go and click on form instances. There we go. Request number unsubmitted by Dale Franks on 8/6/2026. Well, it looks like we did everything correctly that we were supposed to do. We are happy little campers. So I'm going to go ahead and just delete these form instances. And while I'm at it, since I submitted a couple of forms, nothing in active timelines, but there should be 2 in completed timelines. I'm going to go ahead and delete those. Just doing a little housekeeping as part of my development process as we continue building our forms. Now, if I really wanted to test just where I was with the stuff that I had placed on the form so far, right? So my 3 fields. What I would probably want to do at this point to make sure that my test works out properly is I would probably want to go into the building timelines thing and actually run the custom tasks to set my request number from unsubmitted to an actual sequence number. I could do that here. We'll go ahead and do that later when we come back and just do the timeline itself. But keep in mind that we are at some point in the future going to need to address this form field right here so that we change it from unsubmitted, which is what its current default value is, to whatever the form number is based on the methodology that we choose. Great. So now we have our form header. We're going to say that this is the design motif that we use for all of our forms. But now we need to add a very important administrative section on the form. There is a couple of different ways to do this. My preference is to do it in the way that I'm about to show you, but we'll also talk about an alternative method for it. But what I need to have on every form, at the very top of the form, in a location that is easily visible to the user when they open the form, I need a section of the form that when a user gets assigned a task and they open the form, they are going to need to know what it is we expect them to do. I need to give them a couple of bits of information. I need to tell them what task they're performing, and I need to give them the instructions for performing that task. At the very minimum, I need to give them those 2 things, and it should be up at the very top of the form so that they see it as soon as the form loads. Now, presumably, I'm also going to give them this information in the email template. When we configure the email template later, we'll address that then. But it also needs to be on the form itself. So I could just put in the system variables for task instructions and running activity name. I could do that, but I don't want them to show up all the time. In fact, I only want them to show up when I am actively running in the process itself. I want them hidden at all other times. The submitter doesn't need to see anything. In fact, there won't be anything to see. The process, once it is done, will not have any tasks running and there won't be any instructions, so we don't need to see it there either. So the best thing to do is just to put this in an embedded section that is only displayed while the timeline is active. And that's what we're going to do. I'm going to go ahead and I am going to throw in under layout. There it is right there. We're going to throw in an embedded section. And I'm just going to call this instructions section. And then I'm going to put in my system variables. I have a couple of options here, and it's dependent on you, how you want to do it. In fact, it's probably easier if I just go over here and show you what my options are for these system variables. So let's go to the documentation. Doc, there it is. And we'll go to implementation. No, actually, we'll go to system variables and we'll go to system variable parameters. And let's talk about pre, post, and null. When I create a system variable, I have you don't have to use it, but it is available to you. There is a pre property, which is the text that will display before the variable. There is also a post property, which will display text after a variable. And then there is a null property. So let's talk about how we can do this. Now, we don't have to use these. You can do, well, let's look at some examples. I think that'll be a little bit easier to discuss what it is that we are going to do inside this embedded section. So I am going to close that vars file. Glad that opened over there. We will go to File, New Text File, and I'm going to copy this right here. So when you're using a system variable like running activity name, which for some reason, unbeknownst to me, is actually called activity running name. So I want the name of a running activity. So let's talk about, here's our var. And here's the result. All right, so let's say we're running in an activity called activity 1. So this is what I'm going to see if I just use activity running name. But for my pre, let's say I said for my pre, I want to set it to colon space. Then the result that I'm going to get is running activity colon activity 1. And with this post text after var, I could type in something like this. And it would show, oops, Why do I keep hitting space instead of one? So this is what the result of the var would be. Now, if the activity was null and I was not in activity one, then we could say no current activity. And if there was nothing running, so I got an empty result, it would be running activity no current activity. And let's say that, and I generally don't need the null, because if there's nothing running, I'm not going to be displaying this at all. So I can actually get rid of the null. I can probably get rid of the post as well, although let's not, because here's something I can do. So let's do that. Let's get rid of our empty result. Let's say that I also wanted to throw a var like task instructions. Task instructions. Did I finally get that right? Well, actually, you know what? Little secret. Case doesn't matter. It just matters to me. We will say equals instructions. And I don't need a post. I just need that. And what I'll end up with in the result, if I have this as my syntax, which I can do, it will show instructions, colon, space, and then whatever it is you're supposed to do. Suppose I need a quote at the end. So this is what will actually show up on the form. So I could throw this text in like that. I could not worry about the pre and post and just type the verbiage myself, because here's the problem. I still, no matter what I do, I need that embedded section. I need to hide this, because what is going to happen if I am not in an activity is I'm still going to want to show the system variable. And so if I'm not in an activity, what the system variable will look like in the form is this. That is still going to be there, even though I'm not in any activity. And I can't really get around that. So since I've got the pre and the post, or whatever it is that I'm going to do, that's why I have the embedded section. That's why I'm using it, because of those, because I only want to show it, because whenever the form opens up, I don't want to see that. If I'm the user, that looks dumb. And if I've finished the process and my request has been approved, that looks dumb too. I still don't want to show that. At the end of the day, I want to hide these in the section control, in the embedded section control. So in my embedded section control, my instruction section, I do need to go to field properties, and I do need to set the display option. And I want this as field is visible when, and then I'm going to create the condition. Timeline status. Timeline, there it is. Timeline status is active. And otherwise, I want this section hidden. So I only want this section to appear when the timeline status is active. Okay, cool. Now I can go ahead and add those items onto the screen. So I'm going to do a little hybrid thing here. I technically could just go in and copy and paste this text as is. This will work. I tend to dislike throwing in just the bare system variables on the form itself. This is obviously a matter of preference, but it is my preference. And so what I prefer to do instead is let's get rid of that system variable. We'll keep the other one for now. Actually, we'll just put in my space and my dash there. I'm going to go to other controls. I'm going to drop in a system variable control, and I am going to just paste that system variable right there with its own pre. So it's activity running name, pre equals running activity. That's fine. And the label will be activity. Great. So I've got that activity, and then I've got my space and my dash and my space, and I'm going to take this system variable right here, my instructions system variable. I did not throw in a curly bracket. I threw in a, well, that's a square bracket. Ultimately, I will get the bracket I want. I'm just going to go ahead and cut this, and I didn't want to cut that much of it, but we'll go back in and go to other controls, and we'll grab our system variable control. We will paste our task instructions there, and instructions will be our label. And so now I've got my activity and my instructions. I do need to close out that embedded section. So layout, embedded section end. Excuse me, throat is getting a little scratchy. I'm also going to do a little more formatting here. I'm going to highlight everything. Well, I'm going to actually go down here to a blank row, then come back up to this row, and I'm going to boldface this, and I'm going to size it a little bit larger. I think 14 is fine, maybe 16. Yeah, 16 is even better. You know what? We're going to keep 16, and we are going to change the color to, let's give it this nice red color so that it stands out whenever it runs and we are inside an activity. I'm pretty happy with this. In fact, let's go ahead and test it. Let's see whether it will put us in our activity and give us our instructions. Now, in order to test it, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to have to save and close. So I'm going to go ahead and save and close my form where I am now. And since I already have a process timeline, and it does have that activity stub there, I'm going to go into my process timeline, and I'm going to open up activity 1. I don't need that options section open anymore. I'm going to go to the activity tab. And I'm just going to type in sample instructions just to have some. I'm going to turn that capitalization off. And I'll just go ahead and save that timeline. And now I will run this form. Great. What I want to see, and what I don't want to see, is that section there, but I'm going to go ahead and submit my form. And now activity. Oh, I've messed that up. Unknown sysfar task instructions. So I've messed up something, and it could just probably be my syntax there. So we'll have to go back and fix that syntax up. It is activity running name. I'm pretty sure of it. And instructions, I think it may be or comma based problems here. Let's save my form. Is that form instance still open? Did I close that form instance? I did. I'm a dummy. All right, we'll go to the form instance. Let's try to reopen it. There we go. We've got running activity, and I am short some spacing here, so I would want to fix that. And obviously, commas, as we've just seen, are important, so it is a good thing that I fixed those. This is one of the things about testing as you build, real quick, just to be sure that as you go along, everything works. Now, this is one of the things that I dislike, and I'm testing something here. It doesn't look like it, but I'm actually testing something here because I knew there was a little trick. I want to see if I get it right here. Let's save my form again. Let's refresh. Nope, that doesn't give it to me. Its spaces in instructions are in the pre and post are tricky. And sometimes it takes a minute. There was a way that I remember that was it. I don't remember whether this I think I know there was a way of doing this, and it is a little bit of a pain in BSP. Is that a colon or a semicolon? It should be a semicolon. Let's save again. This is where the pre and post are tricky. Let's retry. And I thought I had a way to get around it, but no, it just keeps killing it whenever you try. See, I was trying to do a non-breaking space. Problematic in your pre. I know that one of the things that Frances does is this, which looks better. She throws a dash in there. And that looks better, but that doesn't work for me either. So here's the thing. Sometimes using the pre and the post are a little irritating, and you just want to elide past them. So while they work and they're okay, sometimes it's just better to go with text. Activity, activity, instructions, instructions. Oh, what have I done? There we go. I was not typing. I don't know what it was I was typing, and I was just typing away. But I think that probably gets us exactly where we want with the exact verbiage we want, and it only shows up. There we go. We're happy with that. We have our instructions. Now, if I complete my form or complete my activity, and I go back to the form instances and I run the form again. Once again, it is gone. There is no instructions because that embedded section is now hidden because we are no longer active in our process timeline. In any event, I just wanted to cover all of the different methods that we could get that very top line on our form. And having done so, we now have it in its final shape, and we can now move down to the next line. Now, we need to start thinking about the actual form fields that go on our form. And the first thing we are going to address is the submission fields, the fields that the user is going to place on the form itself. Before we place any of those fields on the form, let's talk about how we're going to group our form fields and how we're going to lay out our form. What we're going to do is we are going to use section controls. And the reason that we're going to do so is because we want these separate section controls on the form so that let's say that I had like 10 different controls that I needed to fill out for a reviewer. And my review task starts. Well, we've already set the form to disable all of the form fields after the form is submitted. So my reviewer is going to need to have those form fields enabled so that they can go on about their business. What a section enables me to do is to group all of the different similar form fields together into a single section. So if I need to show or hide a section, or I need to enable or disable a section, I can do it in that one place. And all of the controls in that section will automatically be disabled or enabled or hidden. So I can organize my form into these different groups of controls. Usually, the sections that you want is a request section. That section will be the section that contains all of the request fields that the initial requester needs to fill out to submit their request. Then I generally need a section for the approvers. And that section will contain all of the fields that the approvers will need. Now, it can run off the rails during approval. For example, a manager might have a set of approval fields that are different than an HR approver or a legal approver might need in order to approve a request. Well, in that case, I might have additional sections, unique sections for legal approvers to fill out or HR approvers to fill out. But you can think that as a basis for a form, I'm probably going to need two sections. I'm probably going to need a request section. I'm probably going to need an approval section. Can be a little more complex than that. If we just talk about the we've talked about the approval section. Let's talk about the request section. What happens if I have a form where, based on the type of request it is, I have different fields that need to be filled out for different types of requests? Well, I'm probably going to need special sections for that as well. Now, one of the nice things about sections is that they are nestable, so it does make it a little bit easier for you to follow what is going on in each section. But you do need to have an idea based on the request and based on the fields that you're going to need to get that request approved. You're going to need to set your form up in sections. So initially, we're going to create our sections, and we're going to go ahead and finish out the layout of our form. And once we finished out that form layout, we're going to end for the day, and then we're going to come back and actually do the form fields and the little weirdness that I have set up for actually building this form. We're going to do that next week, but let's at least put the sections in. Let's get all the foundational pieces done. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to add our new section here. We are going to call this section request. And this will be the section that will contain all of our fields that we're going to need to fill out as an initial submitter to inform the approvers of the information they need to approve or disapprove our request. So we'll just call this request information. And that will be our first section. And now note, this is here to help you, and I do find it helpful. This little carriage return line. I have dropped in this section control, and it's always already down at the bottom of the page. I'm obviously going to need a little extra space there to put in my next section. So I'm going to click the Insert Paragraph Here button. That will move my cursor down there, which enables me to, excuse me, put in my next section. And we'll call this Section Approval. And we'll call this Approval. I don't know if information is the best term, but we'll use it for now. Approval information. Maybe I'll think up of a better term and we can change the text that gets displayed next week. Okay, cool. I've got the two sections I need. I got the request information. I've got the approval information. There are two more things that I need to do to make this form work the way that I want it to work. I'm going to need the action buttons for the form. Normally, if I forget the action buttons on a form, in fact, they're not here. We have actually seen this work. We know that if I just run the form right now, there is going to be a submit and a cancel changes button on the form. These are my action buttons. They will appear on the form, whether I put in the action button controls or not. But I am going to put in the action button controls. And the reason that I'm going to do that is because I want to specify the location that those action buttons appear. Some people like to put action buttons at the top and bottom of the form. And you know what? That's fine. Go ahead and do it. We are ultimately going to have multiple action buttons here because of how we're going to build the process. But for now, we're going to throw our action buttons on. We don't really need to do anything special here. We just need to click the button area and it will appear. And I'm going to place it right here, right below my approval information. And then I am going to go down to the next line by hitting enter, I guess. And I'm going to throw in the one more thing that I'm going to need for all of my forms. And that is my routing slip control. There it is. And I'm going to drop my routing slip there at the very bottom. I'm doing it this way intentionally. So my action buttons are going to go above my routing slip. This might end up being a very long process. It might have 30 or 40 steps. And that routing slip is going to get, big. And the reason why I am throwing the action buttons right up here, and I suppose I should call this by its correct name. It is the button area control. The button area control is where your action buttons are displayed when the process is running. So the reason I put my button area up there is because I want my user to be able to approve or deny the request without having to scroll down what might be an excessively long and tedious routing slip. So I am going to put my routing slip on the bottom. There are a couple of different ways to address routing slips and form. We're going to assume that this is our good form. Next week, we're going to come back and we are going to look into filling out the request information, the approval information. Hopefully we can get that done pretty quickly and move into the process timeline so that we now have, well, actually, I might want to back off from that. Give me a second. Let me finish this. Then we'll talk about something else that I mentioned at the beginning and that I want to hit once more before we end. So I've got my basic form set up here, and this is one way of configuring a form and setting it up. And I think this is probably the simplest way. And if you're going to set it up this way, that's why the routing slip needs to go below the button area control. It's just the easiest on your users. And if they want to see the routing slip, then they can scroll down, but you're not forcing them to. This is not the only way to design a form. One of the things that I haven't talked about, and I probably should talk about more. In fact, we probably need a whole training webinar on it. I may need to make a note on that. It's with the tabbed form interface. And what we're going to do is we are going to go to appruvia.bplogix.com. And okay, I'll log in as BPL support. Sure. That'll give me full control over this system. So let's look at the content list here. And we're going to go into the default partition and we're going to go to Publications 3.0 Forms. And this is the publication form. I actually want to show you, well, let's look at the publication form itself in design view. Okay. Anytime you want to open, please open. We are running out of time rapidly for today. Let's go to the edit so we can see the form design. And well, it is painfully slow today, but it will eventually open up. And when it does, I want you to notice that this form is all tabbed. So I have a whole bunch of different tabs and tab contents on this form. It's hard to see because these are the tab details. Where's my tab strip? Oh, well, I hate this. My tab strip is actually showing up as a text control. I'm going to assume that this was necessary for some reason, which, by the way, you don't need to use any of the actual UI controls that appear up here on the toolbar where you can just drag down and pick a control. You can literally just write your controls in like here. And in this case, that's what we've done. We've done that with this tab strip. And if I go to the user dashboard, I'm going to see if this account actually has any publications assigned to it. If it doesn't, I'm going to have to log out and log back in as me, which I think is what I'm going to have to do. So let me log out and I hope that's right. Looks like it was. All right, so let's go to my user dashboard here. And I've got 2 forms in review. Great. I don't have any particular well, I do have tasks assigned to me, but I want to. Okay, come on. Give me my. Oh, I went to publication searches. Oh no, it opened the form. Okay, fine. This is what a form with a tabbed interface looks like. This is kind of becoming the way that we're doing all of our forms here at BP Logix. So this real simple form that I'm showing you here, whenever we get to complicated forms, and oh, by the way, this is a complicated form and it does a lot of stuff. It has many different tabs on it to make it work. One of the things that we have done is we call this the audit trail, and this is where we drop the routing slip control. We drop it on its own tab. Now, this is just a tab strip and tab content controls, and we've set them to, show up vertically rather than horizontally. And we can go in and we can make all kinds of changes to the form. This form has already been submitted. All of these fields, as you can see, are disabled, and we are showing disabled fields as text on all of these fields. But I have the ability to go and do all of this different stuff on the form simply by clicking through the tabs. Indeed, the way this form works is you see the overview tab when you first submit a form, and that's all you have. You have to fill out the overview tab, and then there's a button down here that says next, and you can click that. The overview tab becomes locked, and then we move to the next tab, which is the detailed tab, and you just move through a tab at a time. And we don't even show you all of these tabs until you finish the prior tabs. So we walk you through, in this particular application, all of the steps of setting this up. If you're going to do complicated form stuff, I'm doing simple form stuff, and it's intentionally simple because we just don't have the time for me to build Pub Pro as a as a training webinar. But you can do this kind of thing, and you can get very complex in terms of how your forms are built and styled. And again, this is just a normal form. There's no special sauce for this. It just happens to be a tab strip control and tab content controls with the appropriate enabled, disabled, visible, not visible condition set as I go through the form and submit it. Of course, after it's submitted, then everything is accessible to you. But I just wanted to point out we have the audit trail on its own field, and all of our buttons are just right here at the bottom. Now, this is kind of cool because it does keep everything kind of compact. Certainly on a 1920 by 1080 screen, it keeps everything above the fold, so my buttons are always accessible. So this is this is an alternative to the traditional form that is going to require a lot of vertical scrolling, and we'll never be able to see all of the form fields probably all at once on one form anyway. But rather than scrolling, maybe being able to tab from field to field is cool. Because let's go back to what I talked about at the very, very, very beginning when we talked about our templates. Everything that we've done today so far, I would not have had to do if I had just used the template that I grabbed at the very beginning. This is basically what a template form looks like. Now, I could go in and do the same thing on my process timeline. We're not there yet because there's a couple of little activities I need to add, but we are more or less, absent some a little bit of timeline configuration, we are more or less at the stage of where you need to be to have your own form, well, not form, but application stub. Because if we go back and look, and let's turn it back on, we are now at the stage where I have my application template. So everything that we've done today, and we're not even completely finished, right? We still have a timeline that has to be configured. We haven't even touched the email, the email template. ideally, I should have all this done. I should have an email template that has a basic notification, right? Knows who the user is. You've been assigned a task, has the link to the task in Process Director, has the instruction text that they need, and then, of course, it has the proper controls. I've got that. I've got my form, which is very similar to the one that we just created. If we look at it in design view, it has my basic form fields. It has my basic text up here at the top. It's a little uglier form. I think my current one is a little prettier. It has request information, our buttons, a routing slip, and our timeline has our custom task activity to set the request number. So what currently says unsubmitted, we're actually going to turn that into a request number, hopefully next week. But, you know, nobody is requiring that I stick specifically to the schedule I created. I thought 4 weeks would be enough. If it's not, we'll stretch it to 5. It doesn't matter. I've got an approval loop, the parent activity. It's a looping activity, and it has the appropriate looping stuff already built into it. Child activity result contains submit. We'll jump back to the top of the loop. Child activity result contains deny. We're going to leave the approval loop, and our approval is over, and we'll have to figure out why it was denied. And then I've got my result notification. Of course, everything is linked with, you know, the form and email template are linked in the timeline. The timeline is linked to the form. So there's my start process and timelines associated with. So that is all set up as well. That is going to save you all of the time that we have spent today going through and building these little simple things that we have so far built. And you'll only have to do that once. And then every time you build a new application, this will be your starting point. It sure would be nice if I had saved my button area control and my routing slip control, which clearly I did not. I thought I saved it, but fine. We will save it now. I'm going to check something now. Now, what just happened? I put these controls on the form. I configured them. Well, I didn't really configure anything, but at least I stuck them on the form and they had their regular configuration. Then I left the form and they got lost. So I'm going to need to check something right now. I am going to need to go here to my form controls tab and just be sure that I don't have any controls marked for deletion. And if I do, I want to delete them because there might have been a ghost button area or a ghost routing slip on the form. There is not, and I did save all of my stuff, so I am good to go. This is where we're supposed to be, and this is where we will pick up next week. Thanks for joining me today. We have a couple of more, well, at least 3 more weeks of this to go through because we still have to do our timeline. We haven't even built any drop-down objects or grabbed any external data. Wow, there is so much more to do, and we will continue doing it when we return next week. Have a great week. We'll see you next time. So long.